So my marketing asked to put this slide. You all know that. This is something that we don't understand what the company does, plus a lot of logo of the same customers for every vendor. I think the only thing that I want you to remember from this slide is that Panaya was known in the past on the SAP domain, and lately we have invested a lot of energy around testing. If you want to remember something about what we're doing, think about HPLM as dying dinosaur, like Sandeep said earlier today, and Panaya is a very good replacement. We lately replaced HPLM at Procter & Gamble. So it's a very promising testing platform that you should remember of. When I met with Procter & Gamble, it was actually a few years ago in another context, I met with Thomas Siebert. He was the head of tools and methodologies at Procter & Gamble globally. And he told me that the way he sees actually his job was to always look for the right tool to be used by the right person in order to be successful. I don't know how many of you have been in India, but it's very surprising how someone can really easily go into such a traffic and make it in time. And if you would take just Hamilton in the same situation with the same car, I'm not sure it would be as successful. And we as product managers, we always try to look at the persona, look at the right use case, and try to match both of them. You are not going to give the same car to Hamilton than you are giving the taxi driver. It really depends on the context. And if you don't look for the right tool for the right person, then no chance that you're going to be successful or that your users are going to be successful. Talking about users, there are three main personas that we at Panaya really care about. And you will find perhaps this session a bit different from the other sessions that you will have, because most sessions during these 2 days are mostly focusing on dev and QA people. And actually, I love them. Dev people and QA people, they are fast learning, they like tools, they install trials, they try it, they invest any feature that you as a product manager invested on. They like to go into all the details, they want to try the tool, they talk about the tool to the other people. But on the other side, when you are in the context of enterprise applications, then you have these business users. And now the fun is starting. You have people that are not technical usually, that don't want to do anything that is related to testing. They don't want to waste time in regression testing. But they are the knowledge owners. They are the only ones who know how the business really runs on the application. And the funny thing is that all of these dev and QA people and even the functional experts are trying to replicate what a user will do in production when we will go live. And we end up in very common organizations to have a lot of defects that escape to UAT, meaning when it comes to user acceptance test, all the defects are only discovered when the business user is testing, meaning that none of the dev or QA nor functional expert actually tested the way the user was working in production. And therefore, they discover a lot of defect. And that's in the best cases, that it was discovered before the go live and not after the go live. Just for me to understand who is in the audience, who is a business user? Can you raise hands? No one. Who is a functional expert? Can you raise hands? Okay. And who is a dev QA? Yes. Hopefully I didn't say that. I love the business users only. And if you can also raise hands just a minute, who is more or less working in an SAP context? Okay, Oracle EBS context. Okay, good. So that's the funny thing. You have dev and QA people that are very focusing on automation, agile, DevOps, continuous integration, continuous deployment, looking for all the ways to accelerate the testing. And on the other side of the scale, you actually have the business user. So how do you make it? I mean, how do you help these people converge and talk the same language? We've run a lot of surveys at Panaya, and the main items that pop up when we talk about business and IT convergence are actually these ones: visibility, knowledge, documentation, and orchestration. Why that? First of all, about knowledge, it's pretty obvious. We have already talked about it. You have business users having most of the knowledge, and they need to transfer this knowledge to the dev and QA, but the business users don't have time to share that knowledge. So you need to find ways to get it. In terms of visibility, you as a business user might want to know what the dev and QA are testing or what the functional experts are testing. If not, you will again be in a situation where you need to test everything, not knowing what the others have actually tested. Documentation is very important. 50% of the defects usually come back from the tester, from the tester to the developer, back and forth until the defect is resolved. Such a waste of time. If you look at traditional test solutions, you would usually have someone from the business reporting a test on an Excel file, then the Excel file being sent to someone that would be nice enough to load it into a test management platform. Then the defect was sent by email, by Outlook, and someone needs to somehow link this defect to a test that was done and uploaded in Excel so that the developer will know how to reproduce. So you lost 2 days, and then another day to ask for more documentation. In the end, you just delayed the whole test progress. So again, that's great to focus on automation, DevOps, and so on. But if you want to go digital, you need to get also your business users and your functional experts involved in your testing. And I wish that in the coming years at Accelerate, we would also see this type of personas in this type of sessions, because they are also critical in the testing processes. In terms of orchestration, that's also critical. You want to make sure that when the business users or the functional experts are testing, they will be as successful as you are with your own tools. But today, there is no other option for them rather than using Excel. And they will not keep up with the pace that you guys are actually moving forward. So what I wanted to do, if there is no question, I guess no one wants to get the drone. Questions? No? So what I wanted to show you is actually a couple of things that we do at Panaya so that you will get some ideas, perhaps, about things that you would be able to automate beyond the traditional automation that you guys are thinking of. So for instance, our testing platform enables you to describe end-to-end business processes. It will sound very simple, but there is no tool really on the market that really helps a business user or functional expert to describe easily an end-to-end process, and that's why they go to Excel. It's very simple. You add one line. This is the sourcing order that I need to do on my external sourcing system. This is the purchase order that I need to do in this particular system, and so on and so forth. Or this is the first step where I create my expense. Someone will approve the expense, and it will go to finance for the payment. So these end-to-end processes are very critical, so you need to find ways to describe these processes very easily. So within Panaya, you just need to add lines, and you would put enough information on the test. This is very similar to exploratory testing, meaning you just give a high-level instruction of what needs to be tested, and the business user will then go and actually test it in this manner. What's happening in this case is that you, as a test manager or testing resource, you would like to notify all the users at once that they can start testing. So the way we enable you to do it is go onto a test cycle and launch it. So each business user or each functional expert or even a tester that is assigned to the first step of the process will get automatically a notification so that he can start testing. This notification is also complemented with a work list, and the work list will actually give you the actual list of tests that you have to do right now. And this is very different from the tools that you guys are using traditionally, where you are assigned to a test package and the whole package is being assigned to a tester. But take the example of functional expert that need to take part somewhere in the process, and usually the financial guy take part of the process at the end of the process, the procurement guys take care of the first step, and sometimes you have someone from the finance sitting in rooms for ages until all the other guys will finalize their own process. So you need to find a way that each user will know exactly when they have to test what, and not a bunch of test packages that might be ready to be tested right now or might be ready to be tested later on. So, for instance, as a user, I might be able to click here on my work list. I'm assigned to this particular test. I'm the first one, and therefore I will use Panaya to capture the evidence. So since we don't have too much time right now, I will go for a test that was already run. So in a nutshell, how does it work? Again, I'm assigned to one particular test. I'm launching here Panaya Recorder. The Panaya Recorder will self-install on the computer and will capture whatever the user will be doing. So for instance, if I click here on the evidence that was automatically captured, you will see here all the steps that were performed by the business user together with the screenshots. So in a seamless manner, a business user can document what they have tested, and this documentation can be used for multiple purposes. You remember this circle with all the different things that need to be improved. So documentation is this particular part. Documentation will be helpful for the actual evidence of the test. This is useful for compliance purposes. This is useful for the developer that will be assigned to a defect if there is any. And this is very useful for automation specialists so that when they are going to automate this particular process, they know exactly how a business user has actually tested this particular step of the business process. So the evidence is really seamless and developed by the user. Another thing that is quite particular to Panaya is the ability to track the progress of business processes. Many times, an end-to-end business process is actually a folder into which you have multiple test cases. We at Panaya convert a business process into one test, and you have high-level steps, meaning that you could track the progress of end-to-end processes and get also the progress on the step level, which is very important. Even if you might be at 80% progress in your steps, if you haven't completed after a few days entire business processes, you are still at risk. Until the last step of the process is not completed, you don't know whether you are going to make it. So you can easily click on the business processes that are currently being tested and drag and drop to know exactly who are the testers that are blocking most of the tests. Obviously, the ones that are doing most of the demos. Questions? No? Yes?
How are you? Is this somehow connected then to Tosca?
Yeah, so we have the connection to Tosca. I will talk to it in a few minutes. Okay, talk about it in a few minutes.
Are you able to say the percent of test cases not passed but steps done? Because there is a way of saying that when you are not taking the whole business process, you are not having done test cases, so you have 0% of tests.
Yes.
But when you've got a lot of steps inside. So when you take the 80% of steps, you are not as zero as when you are at the beginning.
Correct.
Are you able to report somehow?
Yeah, actually, you have here the number of past steps per business process. So you can, if you would put here the priority of your test, then you could see that for the high level, let's say the highest priority test business processes, what is the current progress? And you can adjust according to it. You can define your due date and see when you are supposed to finish each of the steps of the business process.
And you are able to report for all business processes in the project?
Yes, of course, yes. You can export also and dump the data to Excel and do very advanced reporting afterwards. Okay, so what we've done here, we have enabled a user to perform a test. We've provided a very simple work list. We've helped the user to document what they have tested. But there is one functionality that I personally like a lot, is the following one. When you are testing very complex applications, you usually have the same components that are being tested in various business processes, meaning that you have one process that will go in this combination and another process in another combination. But one component might be tested from various combinations. The problem is when someone is raising a defect on this central component, what is going to happen? Usually it will take time until the defect manager will identify that this is a very central component, and therefore if there is a defect, there is no way to stop the testing of all the other components. So what we have developed at Panaya is what we call system-wide defects. For instance, you see that this particular action, like approve expense, is something that is going to be tested by this particular user. Okay. In the meantime, you have here in the dashboard, you have something called potential system-wide defects. Now, as part of these defects, you would see here, for instance, that there is a defect that has been created here by a user on this particular application, which was to approve an expense. When the defect manager reviews the defect, he can see that there is a potential influence on other tests in the system. So we would provide here the list of all the tests that are also related to this particular defect. And then the test manager can, in a single click, define what would be the influence on all the other tests in the project. For instance, he could block the entire business process. He could block only the particular step so that there will be no inflation of the number of defects created in the project. And if I'm blocking here this particular step, and as a tester that was assigned to this particular test, now the test is not ready to test, meaning that I'm not getting any notification and it doesn't appear in my work list, meaning that I'm not getting any notification and I'm not testing something that the defect manager already knows that is faulty. Yes?
How does the defect manager recognize similar steps? Is it called the same name, or is it like in Tosca the defect model?
So as part of the planning, you basically define what's the name of the component, and then we automatically pass all these components each time that the defect is being created so that we push it as an alert to the defect manager. Yes. Okay. Okay. So regarding the question with the integration with Tosca, so this part, as I said, there are many different personas. We talked about business users, we talked about functional experts, eventually about dev when it comes to defect. Another nice feature, by the way, about defect management is, I don't know about you, but many organizations actually have a lot of resolved defect but never closed defect. Meaning that for some reason the defects stay resolved and nobody is actually closing it. So at Panaya, each time that you resolve a defect as a dev person, then the tester, when he passes the test, is forced by a pop-up to close the defect and getting. So it's a nice trick if you want to implement it also internally. It's very nice to make sure that when someone is passing a test that was faulty, then he has to close the defect. So regarding the integration with Tosca, we have two main integrations that I'm going to present now. So the first one is pretty simple, which is basically what you would get from HPALM or any test management solution. You have the ability to reflect your Tosca tests into Panaya, meaning you install a very small piece of software on on the machine that is supposed to run the test in an attended manner, and then this connector will scan all the various workspaces and test cases that you have in Tosca and will bring the references into Panaya. So after you define the path to all these tests, you will start seeing here in the test tree all the test cases that you have available into Tosca. For these test cases, you can create playlists that will then decide on which machine it should be executed. Each test case can be assigned to multiple machines. And then as part of the playlist monitor, you will be able to track the execution of your test cases. And for each test case executed onto Tosca, you will get directly from this SaaS platform the actual evidence of this. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Oh, good. So you have here the evidence of the test that was created. So it's taken directly from Tosca. In case you have DocuSnapper activated, it will also bring back the Word document with all the information. So it gives you a very central way via a SaaS solution to track all your executions. Yes.
How actually Tosca and Panaya work together?
First of all, for this connector, we use the standard APIs of Tosca, where we have the main integration with Tosca is the following use case. So actually, this is more relevant for SAP folks. So I'm sorry for all the others, but I think even though you are not you are not from SAP, you will be delighted to hear about this concept. So what we've done at Panaya, we have developed the concept of automated knowledge capture. How does it work? You basically install a piece of software on the user desktop, so you can deploy it via IT. It is completely seamless for the user, no impact on performance, no impact on the server, but each time that the user connects to SAP, all the activities are actually gathered from the user and sent over to Panaya Cloud. There we run some machine learning and artificial intelligence scripts that will basically convert all the user activities into test cases. So it's quite impressive. You can just run it on hundreds of customers, hundreds of users. And let's take this example. You have here 2,483 activities that were recorded in this period of time by 49 different users. And out of this recording, Panaya created one single test case, meaning all these users perform all these activities in the exact same manner. So if you are an automation specialist and you would like to know how to convert this particular test case into something that will really reflect the way the users are working in production, you will simply go here, get the script, get the list of users that actually run this particular transaction, so you can run some additional validations. You can understand what's the flow. You can understand also what were the main data that were used for this particular test. And then this is where the great integration with Tosca comes into place. We are able to send this information to Tosca, and Tosca has developed, as part of the migration framework, they developed the ability to take these test cases and convert them into automated test cases, meaning that the great capability here is really how to take business user activities directly into Tosca as automated test cases. So, yep.
It's only for browser-based applications?
It's only for SAP GUI applications. So we developed this for SAP. Based on the traction that we will get, we will deploy to additional capabilities.
So Tosca engineer will automate the test case in Tosca.
Exactly. So if you take the typical engineer of Tosca, he will be able to basically sit peacefully on his again in front of his computer against Tosca Commander. All this piece of software will capture all the all the test cases, and it will be filled by reflective test scripts into Tosca Commander. And then you can start the fine-tuning and the test data management that is relevant. So in order to conclude the session, but again, you can come to Panaya to the Panaya booth here to ask more questions. You can also come to try and win some additional drones. And I just wanted to leave you with 3 main takeaways. So the first one is the conversion between IT and business is really key for quality. I mean, especially for digital transformation and all these applications that you are going to develop and test, you have to get these users involved in your testing process. This is really critical. The second thing is test execution is great to automate. I mean, go for it. Obviously, this is something that is required and that will always block you to really reach speed in your delivery. But don't think that this is the only thing that can be automated. Look wider. More users, more personas, more processes, and try to automate the whole flow and not only the execution part. And I think if you remember this taxi driver and Lewis Hamilton, I think it's really important to understand that there are different personas, different people. They don't have the same knowledge. They don't have the same capabilities, and you need to find the right tools for the right person so that the organization will be successful.